But let's be clear, if any of the LGBT people who have been attacked by black suspects recently have been attacked instead by white Donald Trump supporters and Make America Great Again hats, everyone would be losing their minds. It would be all over the news. You'd all have heard about it.
Yeah, I think that's a dude.
No.
David. Whoa.
Oh, shit. Damn. Yeah, I think it's time to leave, nigga. I didn't get that.
Hi, I'm Shannon. Welcome to my channel. So today's video is not going to be super pleasant. There have been multiple recent attacks on members of the LGBTQ community, and all these attacks have one specific thing in common. I think a lot of people who have talked about these attacks feel like they're not in a position where they can openly acknowledge the giant elephant in the room.
I, however, can.
Just to note, I'm going to be using the terms transphobia and homophobia somewhat interchangeably at sometimes in the video. I know that those two terms do have specific context, but I think that they both refer to what I think is essentially the same overall basic phenomenon, which is people having an aversion to people in society who violate traditional gender norms, and those gender norms do of course include the sexual roles that a person is expected to play based on their gender. So with that being said, let's get started. Some of y'all may have already heard about the attack on the transgender YouTuber Eden the Doll and two of her friends that occurred on August 17th on Hollywood Boulevard. I don't want to spend too much time rehashing the details, but for anyone who is unfamiliar, I'll give you just a basic summary. These three young women, they're all transgender, all social media personalities. They go by the handles Eden the Doll, Jocelyn Flawless, and Jocelyn Light Rose. They were robbed by a group of men on Hollywood Boulevard. The attackers actually live streamed themselves doing it, and in the footage they can be seen chasing the women, stealing their purses. One of the men knocked Jocelyn unconscious with a bottle. He had previously thrown an electric scooter at her. The footage is extremely difficult to watch. The men are repeatedly yelling transphobic slurs at them, mocking them, and just generally doing everything in their power to degrade them and humiliate them. Each time one of the girls tries to stand up for herself or tries to get her belongings back from one of the men escalate the situation. They become more violent. The worst part is that there's a lot of onlookers around, and instead of helping, these people just record what's happening. They laugh at the girls, mock them. Some of them even joined in on yelling transphobic slurs at them. At one point in the video, one of the attackers is seen threatening Jocelyn with a crowbar. You can't hear what he's saying on the footage, but according to Jocelyn, he's telling her that if she's really transgender, he's going to kill her. He then takes her hand and tells her to walk him over to the rest of her friends. He's saying he's going to beat them up. And while all of this is happening, while he's holding her hand, and I believe Jocelyn, she says that he's saying these things, while he's holding her hand, you can hear a woman in the background yelling, "That's a boy, don't hold his hand, that's a boy." It's really infuriating to watch because Jocelyn literally is in a life or death situation. She doesn't know if she's going to be killed, if one of her friends are going to be killed. And just in the background, there's this idiot just trying to enforce gender norms just for, like, it's so stupid. Seeing the reaction of the bystanders, it's very, very clear why these guys felt totally comfortable, totally confident about posting this on social media. In some of the footage, you can even see the live chat, which was pretty active with people commenting and egging the guys on. This, despite the fact that this is literally a group of big, muscular, grown-ass dudes beating up on little girls. Regardless of whether you think that trans women are women or not, it's clear that these three girls, Eden and her friends, cannot defend herself against this group of grown-ass men. We're not dealing with a group of trans athletes. This isn't Fallon Fox and Caitlyn Jenner. These are three 20-something-year-old girls who spent all of their adult lives making makeup videos on YouTube. They're screwed in this situation. Luckily, the girls were able to get away. They were able to leave the situation without any life-threatening injuries, although, as I mentioned earlier, Jocelyn was knocked unconscious for a few minutes by one of the men. Thankfully, according to an article that I saw that was published on Tuesday, two of the attackers have been arrested, and the case is being treated as a hate crime, as I believe it is. Now, here's where this video is about to get controversial. This attack on three trans women is only one of several recent attacks that have been perpetrated against the LGBTQ community by members of the black community, mostly black men. There was another attack on another media personality, a gay conservative named Brandon Straka, founder of the Walk Away movement, and several of his friends, as they were attacked by Black Lives Matter protesters outside of the Republican National Convention as they were leaving. You can hear the attackers calling them the anti-gay F word repeatedly.
Oh, really? Really? You're a faggot. That's fine.
I don't speak to people like that. I really do.
You like your big ass, right? You like you don't. You want to take that?
It's
what a faggot ass said.
Look up.
Get away from me. You get away from me.
In yet another recent attack, a YouTuber, a transgender YouTuber named Lilah Gibney claims to have been assaulted by the one and only Chris Brown. We all know he's great with women. She says she attended one of his parties and then he pulled a gun on her and forced her to leave the party because she was transgender. Now, I know what you're thinking. Awfully strange that all of these people who have been attacked all turned out to be media personalities. I thought that too. Can we be sure that these people aren't just trying to pull up a Jussie Smollett on us?
Yes, there's Grindr. Yes, there's Jacked. Yes, there's all of these things, which I have not been on in years. I can admit that I was on that back in the day. I was single.
We probably can't be sure of that, but I think we can try to use deductive reasoning here. I think it's totally within the realm of possibility that at least one of these situations might be a fraud. Brandon Straka is a gay conservative, and he founded the Walk Away movement, so of course he's motivated to want to make the other side look bad. He even appeared on the Tucker Carlson show to talk about the attack after it happened, and I have a weird crush on Tucker Carlson. We don't have to talk about it. So I've watched a lot of clips from his show, and it's pretty clear his whole shtick is bringing people onto a show to try to prove his overall point that liberals are crazy and evil.
Evil. And please don't be tiresome.
So yeah, that alone makes it seem a little bit politically motivated. But that said, when you watch the footage, I don't know, I feel like those people would have to be pretty good actors to pull that off the way that they did. With the Lilah Gibney situation, I love her, that's my girl, but let's be real. Clout chaser! Clout chasing is pretty much the nature of the game whenever you're a professional influencer for a living. So I'm not judging her, but I feel like you kind of have to take what she says with a grain of salt sometimes. I can understand why some people might be inclined to be a little skeptical of her story. We don't have any proof that Chris Brown pulled a gun on her, but she did upload some audio where you can hear one of her friends arguing with an unidentified man about the fact that Lilah is trans.
Me, personally?
Yeah, she's a woman. You called her a man.
It's not a woman. I didn't call him or whatever it is.
You just did, so.
Whatever it is.
I know, but you did,
it's
and
POV.
that's that,
Listen, it's POV though. At the end
no,
of the day,
she's a woman.
According to you, that's your opinion. That's not fact. It's not fact.
How is that not a fact? It's female on her fucking ID. How is that not
And it's male on her birth certificate.
No, it's female.
Okay.
That's why it's so mind-blowing to me.
So on her birth certificate,
I swear on my mother's life, if my mother were to die right now, I swear on my mother's life, she's a female on her birth certificate, her driver's license, her passport, so you are in the wrong.
Right.
Your friend's not demonstrating the best reasoning skills here. Any person with a brain can figure out Lilah Gibney is transgender. Transgender people change our driver's licenses and our birth certificates to say the gender that we are presenting as now. So that's not the greatest argument. But it's very clear that the guy has a problem with the fact that Lilah is trans, and the friend is just trying to stick up for her. So transphobia occurred, it's just not clear to what extent it occurred. Finally, in the Eden the Doll situation, there's some debate about what led up to the attack. The articles I've read claim that the attackers befriended Eden and her friends, and then only to rob them later on in the night. However, another YouTuber that I found, she found some guy online who was claiming that he works at a restaurant near where the attack occurred, and he'd seen one of the men in the video approach Eden hours earlier. He said the guy was clearly not all there, and he assumed the guy was homeless. But according to this restaurant worker, he overheard the presumably homeless guy telling Eden that he was a rapper and he was offering to buy her a gift. And much to this restaurant worker's surprise, Eden went along with it, and she went to the store with him. I mean, I guess that sounds pretty weird. I'm just going to assume that it was one of those situations where the guy was trying to hit on Eden, as guys often do to girls when they're walking down the street. He was probably trying to impress her because he thought she was pretty, and she was probably like, hell yeah, you can buy me some shit. Hashtag bad bitch life. Got motherfuckers out here buying me shit because I'm cute. Trust me, I know how trans girls think. I'm transgender, and while I do pride myself on being serious and pseudo-intellectual, I'm basically the same way they are, if you can't tell by how I'm dressed. Men buying me presents makes me feel like Beyonce. But 2008 put a ring on a Beyonce, not 2020 trying really hard to be the queen of woke people Beyonce. Anyway, back to the less fun part of the video. I would be very surprised if this turned out to be a hoax. The footage I watched was about 30 minutes long. You can actually see like multiple clusters of men who show up at different times, and they don't seem to know each other. At one point, two guys come in to like defend the girls against the attackers, but once it's established that the girls are trans, and that the crowd of onlookers are very disapproving of the fact that the girls are trans, the two would-be defenders start acting very much like guys who are trying to prove their masculinity to the other men around them. In any case, what you see in the footage just seems like way too complex, too candid for me to be able to rationalize assuming that it was a hoax. And even if parts of the attack were faked, it's still pretty clear from the feedback of the crowd, from the onlookers, and from the people who were commenting in the live stream, that they may not have been involved, but they definitely approved of what was happening. Transphobia occurred, and to a pretty extreme extent. And if any of these attacks were fake, it's not like the fakers got the kind of attention that they were probably looking for. None of these attacks have gained real traction in the mainstream media. The Brandon Straka attack was covered by a few conservative outlets, but the mainstream media hasn't touched it. And a big part of that is because Brandon is a conservative. I think he's an ideologue. People are free to be ideologues if they want, but I could totally see him coming on CNN and trying to hit them with a bunch of anti-liberal gotchas. I think the mainstream media probably just doesn't want to deal with that, which I can sort of understand. Although, to be fair, I'm pretty sure if a liberal ideologue got attacked by conservative, CNN would totally bring them on and let them trash talk conservative ideology with little or no pushback. But still, I do think there's a bigger issue going on here. The Eating the Doll attack did get wider coverage than Brandon Straka's. I found articles from CNN and the Washington Post, but for the most part, these articles kind of seem like they were written out of obligation. Yes, her case is being covered, thanks in part to her not being a staunch conservative, but the coverage isn't continuous. The story hasn't become a media sensation like the Jussie Smollett hoax did, or the Tawana Brawley hoax of yesteryear. And sure, part of that is because Jussie is an actor with a lot of A-list friends, and Tawana Brawley, she caught the attention of Al Sharpton, who made sure that her case got lots of media coverage. But the public still ate these stories up for a reason, because they have all the right elements. These stories seem to validate what liberal audiences wanted to believe about the world. With the Jussie Smollett hoax, liberals already hated Donald Trump, so they were eager to believe any story that made his supporters look bad. You see this all the time. The media happily responds to that. They feed it, they keep it going, they egg it on. But let's be clear, if any of the LGBT people who have been attacked by black suspects recently have been attacked instead by white Donald Trump supporters and Make America Great Again hats, everyone would be losing their minds. It would be all over the news. You'd all have heard about it. However, as we all know, liberal audiences are not eager to believe that black people are more egregiously homophobic than other ethnic communities. Liberal audiences prefer to see stories about privileged people victimizing oppressed people. To this audience, black people represent one of the ultimate oppressed groups. They absolutely eat up any story that shows black people being oppressed by white people. There's a whole cottage industry of books and Netflix specials that cater to this genre. So when it's black people doing the oppressing, liberal audiences either ignore it, they deny that it's happening, or they tell themselves that something like black homophobia is really just a result of slavery and racism. It's not their fault. So they try to unpack it in a way that preserves their preference for viewing blacks as victims. Have you ever noticed the way that these people talk about black trans women being murdered? They really emphasize that it's a black trans woman. It's a trans woman of color. You can sort of feel how excited they get by just the idea of a person being doubly oppressed. You'll probably hear them say something like, black trans women are killed by a white supremacist system that devalues blackness and queerness and other academic buzzwords that make me sound smart. Never mind that the fact that these black trans women were murdered literally has nothing to do with them being black. Other than that, they were more likely to live around more black people, which are the actual people that are murdering them. More black trans women are killed because more black trans women have interactions with black men who, on average, are more likely to be transphobic. As we see with these recent anti-LGBTQ attacks, black people, namely black men, are becoming pretty comfortable attacking gay and trans people of other races too, which ironically is probably the result of society becoming generally less racist in recent decades. Maybe now white liberals will actually start listening to Black LGBTQ people who have been trying unsuccessfully to bring attention to this issue for years. A recent example is Billy Porter from the TV show Pose. He uploaded a video to his social media where he said what he honestly felt and knew to be true.
The Black community's relationship with the LGBTQ plus community is appalling at best and eerily similar to that of white supremacists versus Black folk. Hear me, Black people, and hear me well. I'm calling y'all out right here and right now.
And then, of course, he received backlash for it and was pressured to basically pop an ice cube into the piping hot tea that he had previously attempted to serve.
I wonder what inspired you to do that and what the feedback has been like.
I am Black first, and growing up gay in the Black community, you know, it's a very homophobic community across the board. With that said, as the world has changed and as the world has shifted, the Black community is changing and shifting.
I want to be clear that I'm not suggesting that all Black people are homophobic or that there aren't heterosexual Black people who support and love the LGBTQ community. I cannot keep saying that acronym. That's too many letters. Anyway, there's lots of supportive Black people, but they are statistically outnumbered by Black people who have an unfavorable view of LGBTQ people. And among that homophobic majority, there's a culturally specific, exaggerated form of homophobia that has been allowed to fester and that needs to be addressed. There's several studies that have been done on the topic of Black homophobia, and they all tend to find that the numbers for homophobia are higher in the Black community than in other ethnic communities. According to one study, the proportion of African Americans who indicated that homosexuality was always wrong was 72.3% in 2008, largely unchanged since the 1970s. In contrast, among white respondents, this figure declined from 70.8% in 1973 to 51.6% in 2008, with most change occurring since the early 1990s. In a different report, Elijah Ward observed that theologically driven homophobia, aided by Black nationalist ideology, supports a strong and exaggerated sense of masculinity within Black communities that, along with homophobia, takes a significant but generally unexamined psychic and social toll on people's lives. I think that when you look at like some of the cultural staples of the Black community, such as rap music and hip hop, you find a clearly more aggressive form of masculinity that's performed, one that more adamantly and viciously rejects LGBTQ people for subverting that culture. I think common sense alone is a more than sufficient tool for observing this phenomenon and just generally gauging the level of homophobia that exists within a given ethnic community. I think there's a lot of gaslighting that happens in the media where people try to convince you that what you see with your own eyes isn't real, that you're misinterpreting. So it's great that we do have these studies, we do have the numbers to verify what we can all see with our own eyes. Just on a personal level, I can attest that most of the transphobia and homophobia that I've experienced in my life has come from the Black community. Before I identified as trans, I was gay, and as a kid, I was very feminine, and I attended public school from a little town in Alabama. So each town in that county that I'm from has one public school that is more or less representative of the racial makeup of the town, or at least of the racial makeup of who's having babies in the town. So while I'm pretty sure that the Black kids were in the minority, I can tell you that the overwhelming majority of the bullying was from Black kids, and especially Black boys. I got picked on by white kids too, but it still seemed like the most vicious bullying, the majority of the bullying, came from Black kids. I was also rejected and bullied by members of my own family, so this is just a very, very personal issue for me. That said, some of the people who have supported me most, especially in the last few years, as it was becoming increasingly clear that I was on the path to transitioning, they've been Black people, members of my own family, friends I've made over the years. I have a sister. She's technically my half-sister. We didn't really see each other that much growing up, but she sent me like multiple care packages with like makeup and eyelashes. The lashes I'm wearing right now, I know you're shocked that these aren't my real lashes. Like, I'm not good with like sharing my emotions, but it's really touched my heart. Going through bullying growing up as a kid, a lot of people who helped, some of the people who helped me get through that the most were Black female friends that I made. So what you see is that, like, again, I'm not saying that every Black person is homophobic. It's more like when you look at the averages of each group, the average of people who are homophobic is higher for the Black community as a group than for other communities. Hi, it's Shannon coming to you from the future. So I was editing and the thought occurred to me that I think one of the problems, one of the reasons this issue persists in the Black community is because with other communities, they may have an issue, and if you bring it up, there's not the same sense of paranoia that I think a lot of Black people have. Well, maybe paranoia might not be the right word, but like, there's a fear about Black people have of if you bring up a certain problem, that it's going to define Black people in everyone else's eyes. So you can't really address it. It's like you have to only focus on the good or focus on how other races are victimizing Black people. My lipstick is messed up. But you can't talk about things Black people do wrong because it just seems to them like another thing that people hate about Black people. And I get that, but I think it ultimately, that in itself is a huge problem because it prevents us from addressing like real problems. Anyway, I probably could have taken the time to like write that out, but this is just off the cuff. Anyway, back to the video. The point is that I think everyone in the Black community ultimately suffers from this more like prevailing culture of homophobia that exists in the community as a group. And the Black people who don't fit this homophobic stereotype still have to deal with the burden of being perceived as homophobic just because it's such a recognizable problem within the group as a whole. And a lot of times I think that Black people who would want to be allies to LGBT people end up still just conforming to the culture around them or like giving into social pressure, being led sometimes without realizing it by the culture around them. And Black men who like trans women, I feel like they face a special social pressure to like put up a front and pretend that they're not attracted to trans women just in order to avoid being treated like an outcast. It's something that you see all the time. Truly, I think that everyone suffers. So the news of these recent attacks on the LGBTQ community, it's sort of like a bittersweet thing to me in a weird way. It sucks to be reminded that that's the prevailing attitude in the Black community and to see people suffering because of it. But at the same time, I feel like the fact that these attacks occurred and that they were recorded and put on the internet, that is unfortunately what it takes sometimes for people to start taking notice of a problem and to be outraged about it. So I hope that there doesn't have to be another recording of a more tragic situation, a more egregious act of homophobia or transphobia, in order for people to like really wake up to this. I don't think that the Black community is just doomed to this destiny of endemic homophobia. Rather, I think homophobia has festered in the Black community for a really long time, and the only way for us to fix it is to confront it properly. I think we have the opportunity to do that now, and we can't drop the ball on it. Anyway, this was a very difficult video for me to make. It's a subject that people get very uncomfortable about. It offends people, but I've been wanting to get this off my chest for a while. To anyone who's made it this far in the video, thank you so much for listening. This has been a little bit like a therapy session for me. If you like this video, if you like my content, and you want to see more from me, then please make sure to subscribe. In any case, I'll see you in the next video. Bye, y'all.